Hi, this is Ed Cohen coming to you from San Diego, California. This is Global TV Talk Show. We have a very special faculty today, and let's begin immediately introducing Diane Ayers from the Cleveland area. Diane, please say hello and quickly introduce yourself, your name of the company, what you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Ayers. I'm the president of Porchlight Rental and Destination Services, and we provide rental finding and destination settling in services across North America.
Great, and thank you for being a co-sponsor. Okay, Teresa Howe, we've known each other a long time, going back to California-bound relocation days, and so tell us what you're doing right now.
Hi, it's Teresa Howe. I'm with TRH Consulting. I run a consulting company that works with brokers and relocation management companies, either helping them develop business, build relocation, create other company-generated lines of business, just anything that will help a broker or relocation management company expand their business opportunities.
Great. Bonjour to you, Pierre Geronimo from Geneva. Say hi, introduce yourself and your company.
Hi, I'm Pierre Geronimo. I'm the president and the owner of the GR Mobility Group, which is an immigration and destination service provider in Switzerland, Geneva, Lausanne, and Zurich. I've been in this industry for a bit more than 25 years, and I'm also sitting at the ERA board.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Okay, let's welcome Andy Ellerman from London. Hello, Andy.
Hello, Ed. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great to hear your voice again. So Andy,
thank you.
For those of you who don't know Andy, he's global head of business for a large company called AGS Worldwide in Europe. And but he's better known as a climber, a successful climber of Mount Everest, and he's embarking on a new venture, charitable venture, swimming the English Channel. Andy, when you do 30 seconds about that right now, we'll talk later in depth, but just do about 30 seconds.
Sure. So back in 2018, I broke the world record for the highest dinner party on Everest, dressed in tuxedos at 7,000 meters on the mountain. And when I came back, I was looking for a new challenge, and not being able to swim, I thought, what's the biggest challenge I could do apart from learning to swim? I know, I'll swim the English Channel. So I'm going to attempt to swim solo across the sea from England to France. And I was meant to do it this September.
I need to jump in here and say, Andy is too modest. He has, before this endeavor, he has never learned to swim. And he's taught himself to swim. Yeah. And so he's been practicing in the river and in the backyard swimming pool. And please go on quickly.
So I've been learning to swim now, just coming up to 2 years of learning to swim. I was meant to swim the channel this September, but because of the pandemic and everything that's happening, and also the borders are not open, so it's not like I can swim to France at the moment at this time. So I've had to move the date back to September 2021. Having said that, this year in September, I will be attempting the whole distance of the channel in my makeshift swimming pool that I've put in my garden. But we're actually moving it into the middle of the village where I live, and I've got the whole village getting involved at the moment. So it's become a very community thing at the moment.
Yeah, and what is the charity that this is about?
So I'm raising funds for the Community Action Nepal, and another charity, which is Keach Hospice Care. So one is a cancer patient where they look after cancer victims. And then the other one is actually for the people of Nepal. It's helping those in the mountains, the mountain people of Nepal that have nothing. So we help to build medical resources out there for them.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Justin Velton, please intro yourself very quickly. What is your company name? Gold Culture, right?
Yeah, correct. Thank you. So I'm Justin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Go Culture International. We are an online training company, really a software as a solution for really people challenges. So it's kind of a software that solves people issues. And so I was a professor in intercultural communication for 14 years, left that, and started the company a couple of years ago.
Great, thank you. And Andrew Brucey, say hi, please.
Hello, Ed. Good to see you. And I am Andrew Brucey, and founder and CEO of Venium Global. So we are an HR consultancy firm that specializes in artificial intelligence integration for corporate mobility and corporate HR programs. So kind of how we can, the term that we use often is how to augment workforces to make them more productive by using technology.
Great, welcome. Jordan Blue, please say hi, intro yourself.
Hi, Ed. So my name's Jordan Blue. I'm the director of the West Coast for Air Inc. We're a data research firm that also does a lot of work around policy consulting, technology around cost projections and things like that for the mobility industry. And now we're starting to get a little bit involved in remote work consulting and setting up and how mobility will be involved in that particular new evolution of the role.
And so just a few minutes, you and I are going to discuss with everybody else too, the impact of COVID on operations and planning and new things, right?
Definitely. A lot of impact of COVID in all parts of our industry, right?
Great. Okay. All right. Nick Curtin, welcome.
Good morning, Ed. Good to see you again. I'm with DSC Network. I'm the Destination Director, and I've worked in destination services for over 10 years. And currently, I work with providers to recruit and train their consultants and also advise DSPs on I call it the care and feeding of your consultants. And keeping them happy. Thanks.
Okay, that's really interesting. So we have yourself and Teresa Howe as destination experts, also Diane Ayers, who's in rental finding. So we have a nice little core group here. Very quickly, Jana, welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jana Masik. I am Staffing Global Mobility Manager at APR Energy in Jacksonville, Florida. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, great to have you. Okay, Lynn Shotwell, hello.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the broadcast. Everybody, this is CEO Lynn Shotwell. So you're going to be speaking with Rebecca in about 30 minutes or so.
Right.
And I thank you for your time here. I know you're really busy. So this is really cool for me to have you. Okay.
Well, I'm super excited to hear what everybody else has to say and learn as well. So thank you.
Well, and we really look forward to your insight about what's happening with ERC. Both you and Rebecca. Good friend, Rob Maisel, coming from New York. It looks like San Francisco there. Rob Maisel has been around the world. Previously, he worked for Bloomberg in executive capacity. He's writing a book right now. So is it done yet?
And it is. The first draft is done and going through the edits.
Okay, I can't wait to have you on the show again so you could talk about it. So what's the theme?
About how travel changes lives.
How travel changes lives. So a lot has to do with language and culture, right?
That's correct, Ed.
Yeah, so parlez-vous français?
Je parle un peu.
So I want you to meet Pierre Geronimo from Geneva, Switzerland in the upper right there. Okay, and Carrie, welcome, Carrie. Unmute yourself.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
All right. So you're in Florida right now?
I am in Florida. Not the best place in the country to be hanging out, from what I hear.
Yeah. So you're in self-isolation today with us, right?
I absolutely am. But you know what? This is a great way to be in quarantine. So I'm glad to be here.
All right. And what part of Florida are you in today?
I am in Tampa.
Okay.
Beautiful Tampa.
That's great. Well, welcome. So you're with Hildrup.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a freight forwarder trucking, right?
Yep, we're a global household goods moving and storage company.
Okay, great. Also in the Tampa Bay, we have Mary Lou. Hello again, Mary Lou, my good friend. Unmute.
Hi there, Ed, and hello, everybody from Tampa.
Yeah, hi there. So Mary Lou is not as a longtime expert with SHRM Global out of Miami, now in Tampa Bay, and you're now an executive with NetExpat, right? Yeah.
So I work with NetExpat, and so that's with expatriates moving from one location to another. And very interesting times we're facing, but at NetExpat, we're doing a lot to connect our expatriates and to share the knowledge globally. I also do outplacement with Newland Associates, and we're getting a lot of work there. And I'm also affiliated with Hillsborough Community College in their Institute for Corporate and Continuing Education, where we are launching a working remote course that consists of an IT segment, a leadership and monitoring performance segment, which I'm providing, and finally
productivity
tools segment. So that's going to be coming soon to a lot of companies, and looking forward to that.
Thank you. So as you can see on the bottom there, we have a chat, an interactive chat. And so feel free to send any person a question or me, and you can mark it private, or you could say, here I am. And Donna Lacey, welcome. So I want to start right now with a Q&A, if you will, with Diane Ayers, porchlightrental.com. Welcome again, Diane. And tell us what your biggest challenge is during this COVID relocation season.
Well, the challenge is, of course, having people have permission to move. So having their companies actually give them the permission to travel, give them the green light to go ahead and make that relocation. So that's one of the biggest challenges. But then once the green light is given, the next step is, are they comfortable actually visiting the market and going into the rental finding tours and viewing the properties and so forth. So we have had to really amplify our virtual touring capabilities. So we've always had them, but this time, of course, is really enhanced people's interest in having them. So it's been wonderful. We've been able to serve people in a virtual way and make them feel really comfortable about making that move without visiting the market.
All right, so this is rental, correct?
We do rental finding services for people who are relocating, and we'll be renting instead of buying in relocation. Yes.
Okay, and so what are you seeing in terms of activity? It's certainly impacted by the disease. So, but there are companies still relocating people right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think everyone would tell you volume is down, but our volume is down comparatively to last year, but our volume is up, thankfully. May, June, and as we enter July, things are not normal, but it's absolutely picked up nicely. And there are people that are comfortable traveling and actually taking those tours, working with our local area agents and having the local area insights that come from that on the ground. But there are still people who have a preference to do it virtually. And the beauty is we can do both very easily for them.
Okay, does anybody have a question for Diane? Okay, I've got another question. So are you able to certify that the homes for rental will be clean, safe, and trustworthy?
Yeah, there is not a program of that nature out there where there's a certification that landlords have to follow. It really is a matter of the cleanliness that the landlord is turning that property over to the tenant, and having the checklist, the walkthroughs, the things that are needed to make sure the home or the apartment or the townhome is in the condition it's supposed to be. But at that point, it really is up to the tenant to take ownership of the home, and if they want to disinfect at a different level, it's their own home now. So it's how they would treat their own home is how they're treating the lease that they're just going into.
Great. Nick Curtin, now you're a DSC, Destination Services Consultant. Can you comment on is it clean, is it safe, is it trustworthy?
As Diane said, there is no standard for that, and we have to use our ability to instill trust and confidence in the assignee And also, and based on science, they keep saying that the COVID virus only lasts either a couple of days or whatever. And generally, we've been adding where the landlord will do another thorough cleaning of an apartment. We deal mainly with international assignees. And depending on what country and culture they come from, some have no worry at all, and others are quite concerned and clean again, and then they come in with their Lysol wipes and clean down everything also. But it hasn't been a major deterrent.
Yeah. So you're seeing an increase, an uptick in July?
Again, on the international side, not really. The domestic continues, which is good. International, there's departures, which keep us busy, but those are a lower use of time. On the international, there's still a lot of concern. There's closed borders. There's now the delay in the visas. It's really caused a big upheaval in the destination services, especially on the international side, where either they can't come in because of a visa issue, or we're seeing a bigger trend of not wanting to come to the U.S. Not only our problems with COVID, but the political scene, the protests, the riots, and
yeah, it's nuts.
Crazy. So there's going to be a big uptick for Canada. I got to tell you, anyone involved with Canada, you're going to have a great year.
Yeah. Okay, Teresa Howe, what do you see?
I work mostly with brokers, so it's, every broker's responsibility to really, make sure that they have an established protocol and that their relocation team that are handling the transferees are all singing out of the same song sheet. It's important that they do create some sort of policy across the board on how agents are handling showings and how they're handling touring rentals or touring homes, whether it be virtual, if somebody really wants to see it live. So we're encouraging that every broker establish a protocol, and they have, because they have to keep business going in general, not only relocation, but for, their general business. So it's been impressive to me what the brokers have done to really adapt, because, we've had technology that's been out there that allow for virtual showings and that allow for, virtual closings and things like that. And many agents haven't adapted, but now they've been forced to. So the good news is that, we're never going to go back to these kind of archaic ways because the technology's been there. So I think, sometimes, crisis force you into adapting, and that's what's happening with workers, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. So what happens when people don't wear their masks, and do you ask them to put on a mask?
Well, I think that, look, it's just like a restaurant. No shoes, no shirt, no service. I think it's up to every, person that's engaging with someone that's coming in, that they establish their own rules. And if somebody doesn't want to abide by them, then maybe they need to find another agent or another broker. But, I think, we all know wearing a mask is not only for your own protection, it's for everyone around you. And I think every broker has the responsibility to protect their people. And so I think, they have to really set a guideline and be firm with it.
Yeah.
If it makes people unhappy.
Yeah. Thank you. Pierre, in Switzerland, I know we're not welcome. Americans aren't welcome right now, but are you telling people to leave? No, I'm not asking you for that question, but really, are people buying homes on relocation, or they're primarily rentals? Isn't that correct?
It's primarily rentals, but we see more and more a growing demand for assistance with moving. So we see that coming. And regarding the situation in Switzerland, is a bit better these days, and Switzerland has open borders with its EU neighbors, and most of the world, except for a list of 50 countries that includes the US and Russia, Sweden. So you are not the only one, because we normally welcome everybody.
Oh, that's great. And so are you seeing an uptick in business now?
Can you repeat the question, please? I didn't get it.
Yeah, are you seeing a growth in business, an uptick?
No. We are seeing a decrease because a lot of people cannot come because they can't get their visa, they can't get their immigration permit. So we have a lot of mandates that are on hold. None of the mandates have been canceled. they are just on hold. So we see a drop in the number of mandates we're currently handling. But on the other hand, we see a growth on domestic demand because the lockdown has led people to consider relocating to, for example, a house with a garden or a bigger apartment, or also we are facing divorce situations and all that kind of stuff. So there are some domestic things going on where people need assistance.
That is terrible. Wow. Okay, so tell us about Eura. You're a board member. I don't want to hear any secrets or anything, but what do you do? What is Eura doing this summer to communicate with the members and prepare for the fall conference?
Yeah, well, first of all, we had to face the hard work of postponing all our conferences to next year because it was impossible to organize our global conference that was scheduled for Seville. It's a great place, an amazing place. So it was so sad not to be able to go there. So Eura has done a lot of things. First of all, very regular catch-ups. We have organized a lot of also, web conferences in a way, online conferences. We have offered free training for all the members so that they get the MIM certificate, because most of the consultants had to be either on furlough or we're working from home, so which gives them much more time to learn and to have further training. So Eura has been offering this, and Eura has also, via its network of experts, has been offering guidelines on, for example, protocols regarding how you do home searches in COVID times and all the support that the DSPs will be requiring.
Yeah. Diane Ayers, back to you about rentals. You've heard Teresa and you've heard now Pierre. What do you want to ask Pierre about rentals in Switzerland, if anything?
Are you also finding any virtual tour experience increasing over there?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah.
what have you used most successfully to make that transition? Are you using a certain program? Are you doing Zoom? Are you submitting to WhatsApp? How are you handling it?
Yeah, we have used a combination. We have used a software called Matterport that has been used to have a review and a map of the property. And most of the time we have used on-site, because what we call virtual tour is to have a consultant in the house. We have used FaceTime and WhatsApp. And we were like the eyes and the foot of the transferee, because we had a lot of transferee were very anxious about moving and not getting a property. Either they were in the UK, in Russia, or wherever, or in the US, and they were very excited about visiting properties. So then we have done a lot of virtual tours, and it has been pretty successful in a market that was not accustomed to that type of things, So we had to convince the real estate agents about that, because before, if you hadn't physically visited a property, you will not be allowed to apply for that property. And in Switzerland, the market is such that you may have 20 people or even 30 people applying for the same property. So we had to convince them to accept virtual tours.
Right, thank you. Glenn Shotwell, compared with what Eura is doing, would you like to comment quickly in advance of your prepared remarks about the ERC learnings that you're offering?
So actually, one of the things I've been doing, so I just joined ERC at the end of March, so it was great timing, and I've spent a lot of time with Tad Zerlinden and Steve Krein from CERC as well as Eura to try to say, how can we as global associations come together and offer things to our members? Because I think we're all facing the same situation. So we are taking our October conference virtual. And we always have the big conference. This year was going to be in Washington, D.C., but we also had summits planned in Tokyo and India, in Brazil, I think Singapore as well, that we had to cancel. So what we've done with our virtual conference is rather than just having it over the 2 days that we would have had the in-person event, we're extending it out over the course of a month. And we have a really terrific technology platform that's going to allow us to kind of replicate the conference experience. There'll be an exhibit hall that you can visit. There'll be avatars that you have that you can go visit the exhibit halls. You can go to networking spaces and have conversations. You can go to learning sessions that are both live and pre-recorded. So we're doing all of this very quickly. We're rolling it all out, but I think this is an experiment for all of us. But our goal is to really make sure that we provide that education for our members. We've offered some discounts on our certifications. We've offered some discounts on some of our other learning programs. And we also extended membership for people who've lost their jobs and whose memberships were about to expire. So we're trying hard to do what we can to support the industry during this really tough time.
Oh, thank you very much. I want to go to Jana. I know you have a hard close. You need to go to another event. But I thank you very much for being on the program again. And also, I want to thank you personally once more for having me on your program, which is on Saturdays. So, Jana, with APR, what's happening with your world this summer?
Yes, well, thank you very much for inviting and coming on my program. It's been a fun time. And if you're interested to check on it, it's on the YouTube under Jana Masik, and you can also scroll it down on my activities on LinkedIn. So check that out. I think you'll enjoy that. In regards to APR, I believe it's been a year of pivoting for all of us. I just had a conversation with one of our leads in fleet from Sri Lanka, where we need to mobilize 2 people from Sri Lanka, and they were not able to exit the country. We had a person, another person staying in Philippines that cannot exit the country. We have a person staying in the US that cannot leave the US. In the midst of it, we were putting 2 or 3 power plants in Mexico and had to mobilize people on private jets to get people there. So it's just been a lot of coordination, a lot of unique solutions that the company had to come up with and offer to have the business done and to keep the goals in place so we can execute on the contracts that we have in place.
I want to go quickly to Jordan Blue. By the way, we're going to take a quick break in about 2 minutes to show a brand new commercial, and then we'll get right back to the show. But Jordan, you and I are going to talk about COVID and cost of livings. Later in the show, we also have an expert, as I mentioned, from London on site selection, economic development, and we're going to be talking about reshoring the global supply chain from China back into the US, and where will these manufacturing plants be, and how will that impact destination services and relocations as we go into the new world here, what I'm calling the new now. Jordan, quickly, just for a moment, if you give us a quickie here about cost of living comparisons with what's going on now, right? I'm reading that rentals and home prices rental pricing is going up. Home prices are going down. Is that what you see too?
In certain areas of the country, for sure. But I think what we're starting to see is the beginnings of a shift from sort of large, more expensive centers where jobs have traditionally been located, maybe into some new emerging markets, right? So we've heard a lot about an exodus from California, where I happen to live, here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Obviously, a lot of companies based here, a lot of talent based here. And now with the rise of remote work, I think we're going to start to see a lot of those jobs shift to other locations within the country and possibly outside of the country. That I think will offer benefits to both organizations in terms of savings on salaries, but also offer a lot of benefit to employees as well, as they are able to choose the location in which they wish to work. That I think is tied in with that reshoring idea, right? We will see a lot of companies start to bring those supply chains probably back into the United States, or possibly just vary them, not based all in China or based all in Southeast Asia, and start to see them take those manufacturing operations and place them at different locations around the globe, so as to safeguard them from issues like this in the future.
Well, thank you. We're going to get back to you as the show progresses, as we shift our conversations to the new economy, which means the rebuilding of America, infrastructure. There's a new highway bill in Congress. Perhaps Rebecca can get into some of that and how it impacts relocation, potentially anyway. But Paul, I want to introduce my partner here, Paul Johnston. Paul, why don't you say hi and roll the tape here. We want to show this invention, if you will. We want to talk to everyone when we get done with that about how each of you are reinventing your business and your products and yourselves. As you know, I stopped being able to produce live conferences. We produced 20 conferences in the last year, right up till February 27 in Washington, D.C., and that was the end of it. We talked to live about 1,000 people, and then all of a sudden it went away. Poof, nothing. So our business went away. And so this is what you're seeing is my new business, which is this talk show thing. And so the only way to support myself and pay some bills is to sell advertising and sponsorships. So when I was a kid, I sold ads all the time, but now it's back to the future. So I'm taking some old ways from the past and applying them with new technology. And thank you for being on the show. Paul, why don't you show this commercial, and then we'll talk about innovation and reinvention from everybody.
Certainly. Here we go.
Okay. It's only a few minutes or less. Hi, it's Ed, and I welcome you to Global TV Talk Show again. I want to introduce our sponsors. Global TV Talk Show is co-sponsored by Porchlight Rental and Destination Services. That's porchlightrental.com. Porchlightrental.com. Also by CubeMonk.com. That's CubeMonk.com. It's an innovation in also good packaging, freight forwarding, wonderful invention. And by the relocation management company, AIRS Relocation. That's AIRES. AIRS.com. Thank you for being a sponsor of Global TV Talk Show. So okay, I'm back on. So as you can see, that is cute. Paul Johnston created that, and it's going to air. It's going to be shown in every broadcast we do between now and Christmas, and there'll be about 100 broadcasts between now and Christmas. That's about 4 a day, 4 a week. And so, and they'll all be live and then recorded and available on our YouTube channel. So anyway, the idea is reinvention and then finding new revenue, or hopeful. So Lynn Shotwell, ERC has some new ads too, and some new approaches going with your expansion of the education programs and all virtual. So this is a massive undertaking. I know what it takes for us to put this together, and you're like on a mega trip.
We are. So we are, and look, this is new for all of us, but one of the things that my team is doing is being incredibly flexible and agile, and we're benchmarking best practices with other associations. I think we live at this intersection of the global mobility world, which is where all of you are, but then we also come from the association world. So I'm on calls like this with other association executives to say, what are you trying with your conference? How are you taking it? First of all, the whole conversation was, how do you get out of those hotel contracts, right? Everybody has to deal with that. And then if you have an event in person, what does it mean? how far distance do people have to be? How do you serve food in those environments? So we're having those discussions. And then in the virtual environment, we're saying, okay, how do you create a good event for people? How do you keep them coming back for more? How do you get your exhibitors and your sponsors? How do you make them happy? And we all have to really rethink what we're doing in this new world.
That's funny.
This is one of the great things about our new world here, right? Is hearing, so.
I know. Well, let's show the dog and show the kids. Okay.
They're not mine.
Sandra.
Well, I really. Oh,
Sandra. Ask Sandra to mute herself.
I think it's Sandra.
Okay. No, thank you. So let's welcome Yana Ina from Rio. Welcome, Yana Ina.
Hi, hello everyone.
Yeah, hola.
No.
Yeah. So Yana Ina, what's the company you're with now? Brunei? Is that correct?
Brunel. I'm with Brunel. It's a Dutch company, but I'm staying here in Brazil.
Yeah. Paul, can you see that comment from Jana about muting Sandra?
I'm sorry?
One moment.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. All right, thank you. All right, Yana Ina is in charge of mobility and immigration with an energy company in Rio de Janeiro. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, what's the name of that company?
Brunel. We work with outsourcing, and I'm the responsible for the global mobility here in Brazil.
Great. So I want to make sure you know Jana Masick, who's with APR Energy.
Hey, Jana. How's everything?
Okay. All right, good. And I want to make sure you know Pierre Geronimo in Geneva.
Hi, nice to meet you, everyone.
Yeah, okay. And
Hey,
Nick Curtin from San Diego, and Andy Elliman from London, Jordan Blue from San Francisco, Teresa Howe from Southern California, and Diane Ayers from Canton, Ohio, home of the NFL Hall of Fame, right? Okay. And Mary Lou from Tampa Bay. So Rebecca Peters, welcome to the broadcast.
Ed, how you doing? Thanks for having Lynn and I on. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. So you and I first met at the SHRM convention last year, I think. No, 2 years ago.
That's probably right. That's probably right.
Right. I met you in the press room, right?
Yes.
That's right. Well, great.
That would make sense.
Yeah. So I welcome you. So
Thank
you're
you.
a VP with Worldwide ERC Government Relations. So this essentially means lobbying, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I am really, I think, the first in-house lobbyist, I like to call myself an advocate, Ed, being brought into Worldwide ERC.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We need it. And so this is not bad. This is a good thing because, you know, relations are meaning that people get to know each other and understand needs and wants and other ways that people can network and help each other out, do some things that they cannot do alone. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very important. Networking, actually making sure that we're working with the not only the right people in Congress and the White House and the federal agencies. Myself and Lynn bring a lot of experience there from our 20 years of and Lynn's 30 years of advocating on a number of issues in the global mobility space. But it's also about, you know, building those relationships, Ed, with the business community stakeholders who care about mobility.
Right. And so what about the potential of the relocation industry, particularly as the infrastructure bill and other economic redevelopment bills happen, no matter who wins the election, that the relocation industry, the housing industry will really become first responders to getting things moving, getting people settled properly, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the House passed a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill last week. I don't believe the Senate's going to pick it up. It would be great if they did. It would create a lot of new jobs. But again, we'd have to be very mindful of, safely returning back to work since we've been seeing COVID spikes here in the US on the state side. I think to your point, Ed, what we want to be focusing on more is what Congress will move. Right. And we do believe and Worldwide ERC has been doing a lot of work for our members, for employers and employees in the handful of stimulus packages that have already been signed into law over the last couple of months. And as you mentioned, we are expecting when Congress returns from their July 4th recess, I think they're returning mid-July, we expect that they will turn to a stimulus package. Probably the final stimulus package. And, it's interesting. We obviously are going to be looking at a number of issues. In fact, we actually just sent up a letter to Majority Leader McConnell today with AMSA and IAM, the movers, because we're asking that they restore the moving expense deduction, which we got taken away in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. But we're asking them to reinstate that in the stimulus package this go around. So we know that they're already starting discussions on a July bill. A couple other things we'll probably be looking for. One of the things that we definitely support, I think, is Senate Majority Leader McConnell's top priority in this next stimulus is to limit employer liability during COVID, potentially up to 5 years. In addition, we're also supporting a bipartisan bill that is championed by Senator Cornyn that clarifies for tax purposes that receipt of coronavirus assistance doesn't affect the tax treatment of ordinary business expense. So there's a lot of, I think items we will be pushing for, and we will definitely be keeping the mobility community in the loop on that news.
So I want to be sure you know these people, Diane Ayers, this is Rebecca Peters,
Hello.
and Teresa Howe, and Nick Curtin. These people are experts in where the rubber meets the road of the U.S. relocation business in particular. Some international, but it's mostly domestic. Isn't that right, Nick?
Can't hear him.
Oh, for most of our destination services actually is the international assignee who really needs a lot of the hand-holding. It's on just the destination service. Of course, many of these other tasks here, of course, are for domestic, but for destination services, it's heavily oriented towards international, at least the providers I work with.
Right. Okay, Teresa, same thing?
Yeah, I work mostly with domestic, brokers that are handling domestic relocation. Certainly they handle some repatriation, but most of it is domestic.
Great. Diane?
Porchlight was actually founded as a domestic rental finding assistance company. So we do have a heavy presence serving North America and a lot of domestic moves within that area. But we, of course, serve international inbounds into the area as well.
Lynn, let's jump to international for a moment. Your personal relations through the International Immigration Association, but has taken you into contact with associations and people in Brussels and Geneva and London and other markets. So now with you at the helm of Worldwide ERC, is there a lot of communication going on?
So one of the things that we've been trying to do, Ed, is to bring the voice of the mobility community to organizations that we've worked with before. Rebecca and I both worked on immigration for years and on immigration policy. But we're trying to use the connections we built there to kind of bring this broader view of what global mobility is out to policymakers and to other business leaders. So working through organizations like the International Organization of Employers in Geneva, that IOE brings together the business representatives from about 80 different countries. So what we're saying is we're going to them and saying, look, you may not realize that, as you're figuring out how COVID impacts employers in your country, there's this whole industry built around helping employees move. And this is often the talent that we need to kind of kickstart and restart the economies. But also, we employ a lot of people ourselves. And so we talk about, what are some of the immigration issues that are impacting all of you? What are the tax issues? What are some very practical things about, how do you show houses virtually? And in the US, one of the things we've been working on is, can you have electronic signatures on mortgage documents? Some states allow it, some states don't. So sometimes there are just really practical things that we see that could help our industry keep moving forward. And so by using these venues where we can bring together lots of people from around the world at one time, we can be the experts on our little piece of how to get business moving again. And I have to say, Ed, I think the biggest challenge I've found kind of being an advocate on this is that we don't have a great elevator speech yet. So when you start talking to people about global mobility, they're like, is it transportation? What is it? What are we talking about? And if you have time to sit down and explain to somebody all of, what it takes to move, they'll get it immediately, especially because most of the people we're talking to are people who moved abroad or had experiences themselves. If they haven't, they have friends and family who have. So they immediately start to get the complexities of what does it mean to find housing and get kids in school and move all your goods and start a new job at the same time and deal with taxes and immigration and other legal compliance issues. So they get it, but they also say, wow, we've never thought about the fact that there's an industry that does this, right? And so one of our goals is to go out and do some research to say, can we quantify how many people do we employ in our industry? How many people do we move in our industry, both domestically and globally? What's the economic value of that? And then what's the lost economic value from the slowdown that we've had? So we know that we don't have data like the hotel industry where they can say they've had, a 90% drop off in room take up over the past couple of months, and they've had to lay off 70% of employees. We don't have that data. So I think over time, what we hope to do is to collect that data, work with our members, bring the industry together to collect that data so that we have it, so that we have better statistics and we have a better talking points when Rebecca goes up to the Hill that says, what you really need to do is, give us this tax relief. And if you give us this tax relief, here's the knock-on effect that creates jobs, across the country or around the world. So
yeah,
that's what we're trying to do.
So there's a whole bunch of expats. There's some reporting that the expat population, not just Americans, but expats everywhere, particularly from UK and increasingly China, that there's huge amounts of people living outside their country of birth, or they're called expats, expatriates. So there's a huge number. And it's not just the currently employed people. Jana, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely. I believe that this world has become more and more fluid. And at some point, really, where you live and where you work is going to be blurred. So I think we need to be prepared for that reality.
Yeah. Andy Ellerman in London with AGS. Well, you see that. You're on mute right now. Okay, good. So you see that there's tons of Americans in the UK. There must be 100,000, maybe more.
Yeah, I companies we're talking to, there's sort of mixed feelings of what they're doing. No one really knows the actual outcome of what they need to do at the moment. But we are seeing an increase in companies saying that they're going to repatriate their people, get them home, right, and rethink about how they put their people in new locations. So I think there will be a shift in the type of assignee that you see going on an assignment overseas. So we are seeing a lot of companies at the moment that are planning to bring their people home because they're stuck, they're out there, they feel lost a little bit. But then there are other companies we speak to and they're like, right, okay, we've just changed the way we're going to do it. We're not going to send families, we're going to send, we're going to send single people, we're going to send them on permanent moves, or we're going to send them on long-term assignments. So I think there's a shift of what we're seeing. Before the pandemic, a lot of it was short-term assignments. I think that will come back eventually, but at the moment we're seeing that change, that shift will be to make them permanent, repatriate them or put them on long term.
Yeah, well, that's good. Okay, Pierre, what are you seeing in Geneva and Zurich? It's pretty constant population, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But to go back to what you were saying, the terminology expat is really no longer really valid. I mean, in terms of under an expatriation package, we see a lot of local people or people being localized. What we see is we are a kind of a special country. We send very few Swiss abroad, but we attract a lot of people. So we see a war for talent, and this war has not really stopped. So Swiss companies or international companies based in Switzerland, they are still looking for talents abroad, but a lot of people are under local contracts. So it's a new category of expats or mobile talents. I don't know how we can call them, but definitively the wording expat is linked to a certain type of contractual agreement that we less and less see right now. And we see also a lot of people being localized. They were expats and they become local with some benefits, but that's something that we see more and more.
Okay, Andrew Bruzy, you ran mobility for Walmart for quite a while, and now you're an expert in AI and robotics and things like that. So you're going to talk a little later with Dr. Velton, but why not jump in right now and talk about work from anywhere?
Sure. Well, and I think that I don't mean to get too philosophical here, but I think a lot of even what our clients are doing in the mobility space is that they're looking at the why of which they're sending people and then seeing if they actually have to. So basically, if you're looking at a function that you need to fulfill in a certain location, obviously in the space in which I play in the most, that's when they're looking to see, can we make this a digital team member? Can we go ahead and augment our current staff in order to support them so we don't need to move someone? Or if we do move someone, it's a lot more purposeful. So I loved Pierre's comment of that kind of the term expat has gone by the wayside, because it potentially very much has, especially when we're not going to be seeing that for a while. So whenever we will see people moving, especially internationally or especially in temporary assignments, I think it's going to be a lot more data driven, where in our field, and I think HR in general, I don't mean to knock our industry, but we do happen to be very, we lead from the heart rather than leading from the numbers often. And I think there's going to be a lot more organizations that are looking at their numbers, trying to figure out how to make objective decisions in their talent mobility needs, and then whoever they do actually move, they may spend a bit longer, or maybe, again, a lot more compressed, where they'll be like kind of in a global mobile position.
Great, thank you. Let's go back to Jordan Blue and talk about numbers. Rink's very technically oriented. Everything has to do with numbers, right?
Yeah, we collect a lot of numbers all across the globe, also domestically. What can I tell you about those numbers?
Yeah, so how are companies going to readjust compensation? I know you're just guessing right now, but how are companies going to change their reward packages for people who are working from home? How do you measure success?
Well, that's a great question. I think that we're seeing a couple of different things right now, right? On one hand, we're seeing some companies start to support work from home costs, right? We've all had to buy sort of an upgraded internet, maybe a new camera to work from home. And I've seen a lot of companies actually go out and help to support those costs in a variety of different ways. Some companies are paying flat amounts across the world. For example, I believe it was Clorox that paid $1,000 for every employee across the world. Some companies are taking those costs and trying to vary them based on the location of those employees. But we do see a lot of companies trying to work and to help support those costs. Another major shift that we're starting to see, and this I think kind of goes into what we were talking about with like the decline of expatriates, or maybe that terminology, is the rise of work from anywhere or virtual assignments. And as part of that, what I think we're beginning to see is a shift in the total rewards structure, or the pillars within that total rewards structure. typically it's been compensation, benefits, career progression. Now I think that what we'll start to see is location being an important part of your total rewards matrix. And if you're going to allow people to choose their location, maybe what that means is that you'll be able to decrease some of the support that you provide in the other pillars. So for example, if I'm here in San Francisco and I decide that I'd like to move to Columbus, Ohio, and I've determined that there's maybe a $20,000 pay difference between San Francisco and Columbus. Well, what I think we'll see is what we refer to as gain sharing, right? Where the company might reduce my salary by $10,000, but I'll keep the $10,000 in savings between the cost of living difference. And so that's a very different way of looking at mobility, but I think it's a new way that will be a revolution for our industry.
Let's talk about companies, say in San Francisco Bay Area, that have had a hell of a time recruiting people into that area of California, if they're not already from California.
Right.
And so the companies are opening up in Phoenix, they're opening up in Austin and elsewhere. So what do you think? You think they might open up in Bakersfield?
They could. However, I think California in general presents some challenges, right? It's not a particularly business-friendly atmosphere. We've seen that Tesla has said that they will look to open new locations outside of California, right? Texas, Nevada, different places like that. So yeah, I do think that we'll see a shift from some of the more major metropolitan areas in California, possibly to some other areas within California, but more likely to other states.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to Lynn Shotwell and just a technical question about the role of the different committees that you have. And how will the committee structure begin to change as you go forward, particularly considering this work from home thing?
So one of the things I'm 90 days into this job. So one of the things that I am looking to do is to get my arms around what's the structure that we have and how do we move it forward? We know that we need greater input from experts across our membership. And so we're trying, I'll be honest, we're just trying right now to figure out what that's going to look like. So we're in the process. We just put out a call for new board applications. We received a number of those. So we're going to be bringing some new people onto the board. But as I look at that list, I'm like, boy, these are people who are willing to volunteer, and I don't want to let them go away, even if I can't put them all on the board. So are there other ways that we can use this? So one of the things that I think this virtual environment for our conference will give us is the opportunity to experiment with some of this. How do we bring different experts together to brainstorm around an issue, particularly since, what I'm hearing as I talk to CEOs in the industry is they're willing to kind of come together as a group and maybe share information a little bit more than in the past, right? We're all in the same competitive environment. So can ERC be the location where, we collect information about what's happening in different relocation management companies? What are they seeing in terms of transfers? And can we anonymously collect that data and then do some analysis about, okay, those who serve the manufacturing industry are seeing a certain pattern, where those who serve the tech industry are seeing a different pattern. Those are all of the things that we're looking to figure out, how can we do that better? So welcome ideas. But the one thing I can say is the committees that we've had in the past will be different than what we have going forward. Great,
thank you very much. Okay, Rebecca Peters, what are some of the hot issues other than getting the tax breaks back for home purchase? What can be done to help small businesses? There's so many small businesses that service the big corporations who move people. What do you think, just off the top here, what do you think about getting some kind of a tax break or something for the small businesses that help the relocation industry survive and grow?
Yeah, well, we need to get the extension in the next stimulus for the loans for the small business, because that's coming to an end, I think, end of July, if I'm remembering correctly. Keep in mind, Lynn's in this job 90 days. I'm in this job 5 weeks. So, we're getting our arms around a lot of things. But I think, Ed, to your point, some of the other things that we're seeing, and this may or may not affect small business as much, although it could affect a startup quite a bit, is one of the big things that we have been advocating on and working on. And I think one of the largest issues that's going to impact the mobility industry coming into and out of the United States is the immigration proclamations that we've been seeing the administration put forward. Many of you might remember back in April, the president put out a tweet that was heard around the world that he would be limiting immigrant visa entries into the US. And, you know, in that scenario, worldwide ERC and a lot of business stakeholders were able to limit the scope of the time frame and suspension just to 60 days at that time, and just to the entry of new immigrants. And it didn't have a lot of impact because, you know, we're seeing at that time, and we still are seeing, a lot of travel restrictions. But then at the end of June, we saw the president issue a second immigration proclamation in line with his goal to hire American workers first, that suspends certain new non-immigrant visa entries and extends the new immigrant visa entries both until the end of the year. And while we and the business industry, I think, advocated very much to restrict, you know, to not restrict access to critical talent as employers are working to recover and help the economy recover, we were not successful in that endeavor, unfortunately. And while I think this second proclamation, which is mostly impacting new H-1B visas, L-1 visas, so your specialty occupation workers, your executives and managers, your J-1 visas, your cultural exchange visas, your H-2B visas for like essential workers, lower skilled workers. While we probably won't see a big impact in the near term because of all of the restrictions into the United States in different countries, I do think as consulates around the world start to reopen, this is going to greatly impact mobility. And I would say even small business that are startups and rely on that talent, if you will. People earlier on the show were talking about that war for talent. And it's so true here, even in the United States, where graduating out of our US universities, we've typically seen over the last 20 years, anywhere between 50 to 80% of folks graduating with advanced degrees in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, where we have shortages, being foreign nationals. Something that just was announced yesterday is President Trump is really asking international students who are here in the US, who are attending universities or colleges that are all online courses, to either transfer to a school that's in person or to leave the United States. So we're going to have a real pipeline issue too here in the US. But I think, you know, Ed, I don't want to take up all the time here, but I think that is a real big issue that is going to impact mobility as we move forward as well.
So what is the L1 visa? Could you just delineate?
Sure. I mean, not to get too in the weeds here, but there are typically two different kinds of L visas. We have an L1A visa, which is for our executives and managers. These are people who are coming from a subsidiary or an affiliate organization overseas to the United States. They have to usually wait a year before they do that. But then they can come in, they can help with reestablishing a new business, you know, if overseeing and managing that. If the executive needs to come in to the US, they can come in and do the business they need to do as well. The L1B is a specialty occupation visa, and that's a little bit more like the H1B. So really, you know, you can see a ton of people working in those fields, whether it's healthcare or related, or science or engineering or technology related. You know, you get a lot of those kind of workers.
Okay, who's got a question for Lynn Shotwell or Rebecca? Please speak up.
Lynn or Rebecca, I'd like to know how different your approach is to what we had done previously. Do you have some sense of that?
So I think worldwide ERC, from what I understand, has only been active kind of in the advocacy space for about the last, well, there was some activity early in the 2000s. I know there was a coalition put together to work on a tax issue. Then we weren't active for a couple of years, and then we brought some outside lobbyists in to help us out. I think my approach, how it's a little bit different, is by having somebody on staff. Rebecca's job is, we're not going to be necessarily the leads or the experts on any of these issues, but we're going to use the relationships that we have with others across the business community to bring our particular expertise to the issues they're working on. So for example, we're working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers, who are really leading on, on some of the COVID relief, but we can be in there saying, hey, us too, and we have a few special needs in here. We're aligning, as Rebecca said, with the movers to put forward those particular issues. We're working with the realtors on the mortgage issues. So our goal, both in the U.S. and abroad, is to find those broader coalition partners where we can amplify our voice, and then and again, over time, we need to create that unique voice of the mobility community by saying, these are our particular issues, this is our particular economic impact, and then figuring out how we can create solutions around that. So advocacy is a long-term game, but we're going to do what we can to raise our voices in the short term.
And the big point I'm hearing you make is that Rebecca's on staff, which is different than the tack they've taken in the past, which is
correct. She is on staff, but we still have our forums. We still are going to rely, we can't do it all. We're going to rely heavily on our members. And one of the things that we're exploring is figuring out who among our members maybe has their own lobbyists on staff. So I know some of the big companies do. And so then we can serve as a resource to them as their company lobbyists talk to their local members. One of the things I'm actually super excited about with this group is that a lot of our members are small and medium-sized enterprises. And what we've found over time is that often those small business owners are pretty well connected to their members of Congress. So our job then can be to create the talking points. Small business owners don't have any time to figure out what's going on in Capitol Hill. But Rebecca can track what's going on in Capitol Hill, then we can send out a message to say, hey, if you have a relationship with your local member of Congress, tell them we need this provision, or we need a positive vote on a particular bill, or we need them to block something for us. So I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think, I don't know what happened with the elimination of the moving tax deduction, back when there was big tax reform. A lot of these things happened at night, but if we have somebody on staff who's really watching these things, and we're in there and they know that we're paying attention, hopefully we can both play offense and defense with legislation, and not just legislation, but also regulations.
Thank you very much. I want to be sure that we all understand that the nature of the relocation services and relocation directors, realtor relocation directors, have been for 30 years the foundation of taking care of people. And so once again, I want to bring back Teresa Howe. She and I have known each other a very long time from LA and relocation activities. So Teresa, once again, how is the relocation director business different today than from the 80s?
Oh gosh, I think now a relocation director isn't just a relocation director. I think most of them don't even use that title any longer, nor do they call their department relocation department, because they're creating local affinity programs, creating area-based programs, spousal, programs. There's different types of revenue generating and, services that they can provide for their brokerage. Many times they also facilitate the internet leads that come in, because really what they're doing is they're providing a customer service platform for their company and generating outside sources of business. And I think, as Lynn just talked about, we all talked about, relocation is evolving. And I think while, domestic relocation is going to continue and maybe increase, because people will either, change the city or decide that they want to live more remotely, they'll still be relocating. But I think it's going to be a different environment, in that we really want to support the localized community as well. Programs that help people that are moving within the city, not necessarily relocating for a job, but are relocating because of a life event. Either they lost their job and they can't afford where they live now, or they want to get outside the city. So relocation directors, I think, have become very much more evolved over the years in being more, as a resource for their company to generate all different kinds of business for their company, not just relocation.
So I want to introduce Courtney Margitson, who's joining us from London. Hello, Courtney, my friend.
Hello, Ed. How you doing?
That's great. I want you to meet a fellow Londoner who I think you met at the London conference that we produced, Andy Elliman.
Okay.
Yeah. So our
Hi, Andy. Did you say Indy?
Yeah, Andy.
Andy.
No,
Andy.
Actually.
Hello, Andy. How you doing? And I think we did meet in London. We did. Hi, Andy.
Yeah. So so he was a chap that climbed Mount Everest, and so they both were at the London meeting that we produced a couple of years ago.
Great.
So Courtney is the owner and publisher and director of FDI Alliance, Foreign Direct Investments. And that a lot has to do with site selection, but more so it's economic development, right, Courtney?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do companies decide and how do you advise them on site selection where there's space, where there's people and talent and cost of living variances makes sense to invest in, whether it's Texas or California or Arizona or the West Indies? Who knows?
Good question, Ed. What it is we do is, FDI Alliance International is an international platform that we allow economic development directors in the United States and Canada to market their locations as viable, lucrative business opportunities for long-term and short-term investment. So it's a great question, because what we actually do is we work very closely with the economic development directors, and we allow them to have a platform rather than just being led by investors and site selectors. We allow the economic development directors who get paid a good wage to market their locations. So they will talk about their communities from a business climate standpoint, incentive program standpoint, and we allow them to have that platform through our international magazine to educate investors and site selectors about what it is that they should be, where it is that they should be investing in the short and long-term future.
So, Courtney, do you have the magazine you can hold up in front of the camera and let people take a look at it? If not, I've got online copies that has my article.
I haven't got one in my hand, but I can. The next time we speak, I'll have one. I didn't have one in my hand, but we'll have one. I'll get one to all of the members of the discussion shortly.
I'm always known for hitting you with angled questions that you don't expect, so I apologize for that. So relocation.
I'm known for that too.
Well, we're brothers. Right? Okay, so I want you to meet a couple of cool people here. Jordan Blues from San Francisco. He works for a company called Air Inc. Jordan, you can describe Air Inc. a lot better, but in relation to economic development decisions, your cost of living data would be very useful for some of his clients.
Yeah, definitely. We also do a lot of site selection work where we take a look at the cost of labor, the cost of living, the talent available in a particular area, and help companies make smart decisions as to where to invest based on those particular factors.
Right. And so part of all that economic development are the people to take care of people. And so the relocation directors that we have here, the destination experts, include Diane Ayers. Please wave, say hello, Diane. Yeah. And Teresa Howe. Meet Courtney. Nick Curtin.
Hello, Teresa. Hello, Diane.
Yeah. Okay. And so now we have a couple of others. Andy Elliman, you already met. Yana Ina Chesanovsky is a corporate manager of people and immigration and talent mobility in Rio de Janeiro, a wonderful place. And Andrew Bruzzi used to run the mobility for Walmart Corporation, and now is an expert in the applications of AI to all of this. Is that right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, good. So who did I leave out? And Pierre Geronimo from Geneva, Switzerland. Meet Courtney from London.
Hi, Courtney.
Hello, Pierre. Good afternoon, or should I say good evening?
Yeah,
good morning.
Yeah, bonsoir. Yeah. So Mary Lou is from Tampa Bay and longtime expert in HR issues. And Rebecca Peters is an attorney in Washington, D.C. So we've met everybody, and Lynn Shotwell is the CEO of Worldwide ERC. So once again, Courtney is an expert in economic development, public relations, and research information. So Andrew, it's a little bit soon for you to start, so we're going to wait until Dr. Velton comes, but why not jump in here and talk about the applications for why Walmart stuck in Northwest Arkansas as it relates to economic development and site selection.
Oh gosh, that's fantastic. I would have to get into a bit of a history lesson, and I'm not going to bore you with that, but there are significant benefits to having an area where essentially Walmart controls Northwest Arkansas. There's also a number of Fortune 500 companies that are there, GB Hunt, Tyson, et cetera. But yeah, it's interesting. I sometimes joke with people that aren't familiar with the area of when you are an employee with Walmart, you get discounts everywhere, including Buffalo Wild Wings, which is fantastic. So,
okay,
it's actually a beautiful area. If you've ever been to Northwest Arkansas, it
absolutely is. Yeah, and it's something that I think when people will have assumptions of certain areas. I think that's something that we probably all deal with in mobility of, oh, that location may be dangerous. Oh, that location may be expensive. That location may be this or that. But in Northwest Arkansas, it is definitely a bubble. I describe it often as a suburb without a city, because there's no major metropolitan area, but aside of Bentonville, of course.
Yeah. So, okay, Dr. Velton is in Texas. So your company is Go Culture, right?
Correct.
And you're about to launch a new series tomorrow, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, we're launching this week. We provided prior, kind of pre-COVID, of course, a lot of focus was on relocation services in a very specific niche. We don't do as much culture. We're kind of the culture people, but we don't train on culture. We train on the individual. We did an extensive 20-year research project that looked at how do we affect behaviors and skills and things like that and attitudes and relocation success. And so during COVID, when relocation took at least a momentary lapse, we were pivoting what we were doing to really base off of a lot of our research programming on diversity, equity, and inclusion elements. And then in the midst of that is when, at least in our country, in the US, topics around DEI exploded. And so we are finalizing and launching this week our new program. We call it a Global Citizenship Program for organizations, for assessment and training around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So how does all this relate to, this is off the wall and you're not prepared, but let me ask you.
Hey, Ed, I was a professor for 14 years. I got off the wall.
Okay, so DEI, how does that relate to, that's diversity and...
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, okay. What's the equity mean?
Yeah, so the equity is really an egalitarian approach, making sure that all who are involved not only have a seat, but also that we're treating them with the same level of respect, the same opportunities, that the playing field is as even as we can make it in certain situations. And what's interesting, Ed, is that, and why we kind of make this pivot and have a position there is because in the 20 years we were researching relocation success, we found that a handful or more of the factors that relate to someone's ability to actually be on field long term, not to just go and panic and come home and marriage a wreck and all those things, but how do we help them stay long term beyond just culture knowledge? We found that a lot of that success was really focused around their ability to engage with diversity, to be inclusive of others who may be different from themselves, and those types of things. So it was an easy fit for us to adapt what we were doing really more for a more global market in this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Great.
That's a great article subject, Justin.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, in fact, Courtney, why don't you ask Dr. Velton to write an article instead of me for your new magazine?
or as well as you, Edmund.
Okay, so I want you to meet once again Ina Chezanowski, who's a longtime supporter of diversity and equity and inclusion in Brazil. Isn't that correct? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, we have been in contact. I always I admire their project and everything. I'm always following their job and everything.
Yeah, we always appreciate that. Jen is a big supporter. We're thankful for that.
So, Yana, tell me about relocations now in Brazil and in Rio. Are they going on, or is everything stopped there too?
Well, the numbers are still increasing here, unfortunately, but last week the authorities opened our borders for labor. So people are allowed to enter Brazil, not in every airport. We have some just in São Paulo and Brasilia, but we are receiving people, but people are not really coming. It's more like, for example, I work with the oil and gas industry, so for our industry, it's kind of being a good thing because we have the rotators that work offshore and all that. So having the borders open makes our life easier, but of course with a lot of requirements for the entry here. So, but this just started like last Friday, so 2-3 days that we are dealing with this whole entry, and it's a lot going on, but slowly we are getting things back in place, but it's complicated. It involves a lot of things. So it's not just the fact that they can enter the country, it's finding ways to have them entering, but keeping them safe, feeling safe. So a lot to work. It's been really busy. People are worried, but for another point of view, it's good because the borders are open.
So, Ina, being involved in relocation and immigration for an energy company, a large one there's a lot of economic development going on in the southern part, Rio South, and offshore, of course, because of the energy. So are you seeing other companies grow, or is everything sort of stagnant right now?
At this moment, everything is stagnant because it's not just the pandemic. We are dealing with political crisis as well. We joke that here in Brazil, we don't deal with one problem at once, so we have a lot going on. So unfortunately, at this moment, it's stagnant, but we are positive about the last quarter of this year and 2021. Based on the oil and gas industry, we have a lot of projects that were already signed in the beginning of the year, last year. So those are projects, long-term projects. It's not something that 1 year will impact the whole project, but everything was just kind of postponed. So, but we believe by the end of the year and beginning last one, things will be better. But at this moment, everything is stagnant.
Okay, that's really good info. So once again, Courtney, how are companies making investment decisions, economic development, site location
I mean, I think it's a number of things. Like we discussed before, it's cost of living, it's business climate, it's incentive programs on a state level, on a national level. It's for me, if I was making a long-term decision as an investor, I have a British company. I think a very, very important thing is quality of life, education. And I think a lot of companies nowadays are tending to move to locations that are very similar to home and specialize in similar industries. So, for example, Jana from Brazil may experience a lot of African or Texan companies. As you know, it's a large oil and gas hub. So I think companies now are really compiling the statistics and really making decisions based on some of the really quantitative things as opposed to what they were doing before. And also with us, we try to ensure that we market those locations to investors with a view of making sure those companies or those industries and locations are not just exposed, but presented as lucrative opportunities.
Thank you, Courtney. So back to Diane Ayers in suburb of Cleveland, Canton. Ohio is a cross-section of America. East, west, north, south, all come together in this great state of Ohio. So you're very familiar with economic development and bringing companies in or expansion. Some go, some expand, some come in. So you've been doing this a long time for that area. Destination services, helping people, helping companies achieve economic development growth as a result of your hands-on services.
Oh, absolutely. Helping them recruit the talent, making sure the talent stays because they're happy with the locations and the areas they're learning about. So, I mean, our whole job as destination providers is really providing the local area insights that make people feel good about where they're living, or at least help them replicate a lifestyle they're looking for. It's just key to how this is all done. And yeah, Ohio is a nice Midwestern state. We certainly are across of America, quite honestly. We have a lot of diversity here, more so than people believe sometimes when they come, especially in the Cleveland market. Columbus is huge with our universities there, our medical centers. But overall, our job here in Relocation and the others that are on this program with you as well is really to make sure that the talent that our companies are bringing in as they try to grow and expand is to make sure that they have the proper housing, the proper support in place so that they ultimately are happy, productive, and stay. And it's really that simple.
Andrew Brucey, technology, let's zero in on that for a couple of minutes now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And so it's interesting because I mentioned before, kind of in the beginning of our conversation, that a lot of organizations are going to have to look at the why of why they're moving people. And, whenever I think the thing that the pandemic has taught us is that we can effectively work remote. So for our industry, for mobility in general, and actually even for total HR, it will force a fundamental transformation. And we've always talked about, disrupt HR, and there's lots of tools that we'll bring in that I'll often refer to as a bit of novelty rather than innovation, where to me innovation is like a fundamental change where you can bring in something that makes a true impact. So a great example of this is one of the benefits that we are now going without because of our remote working is kind of having chair-side conversations, to be able to turn around, tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, I have a quick question. And they'll be able to answer that for you. We do have instant messaging systems, we have text messaging, but it's still not the same because they're not just there. So, and sometimes we have to wait a little bit longer for it. So I think that it has been a combination of both slowing our production and then disconnecting us as humans. And one of the solutions, and actually one of the reasons why I work with Dr. Velton so often, some people joke and ask if we're from the same company sometimes, but I'll show you we're not. It's because of his integration of technology into his platforms. So one of our tools that we'll use is a digital team member where, including in the relocation space, where if you have internal HR business partners or recruiting, that you can ask the digital team member a question. It's like a digital expert, where that will help increase the speed of your production. And when we talk about augmentation, we're not just talking about providing technology in like the form of systems, but also doing it in, of course, in AI, like conversational AI, to be able to pick up the function of a human, support the function of a human, and then decrease the admin of the other humans so they can be more impactful. But then, of course, and actually one of the great things that Dr. Velton does is focusing in kind of in the learning and development aspect, which I think is fundamentally going to change as well, because we no longer can attend big classrooms. I mean, we were discussing with ERC earlier that Lynn is making the October conference virtual, which is phenomenal. If you would have said that a year ago, everyone would have told you it would be impossible. But now this is actually our new now, right? This is what we have to do. And we're learning it's productive. So what is this going to do to mobility? And what is this going to do to our industry? Because all of the people in the past that said, oh, can they work remote? Said, oh, no, we need them on site. We've proven that they can work remote. So what's the benefit of moving them? What's the alternative of moving them? And how do we make it more cost productive using things like virtual reality, augmented reality, AI to reduce some of the spend on the admin function and kind of ease people's transition into those areas? We've been playing with a lot of virtual reality tools recently, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart at the moment.
So I want to take this to a little lighter vein for a minute. Pierre, if you had a robot in your office now, what would you have the robot do? Oh, I can't hear you.
I will ask the robot to have some air conditioning, because it's very rare, and probably bring me a drink. That would be an ideal situation.
Well,
no.
I'm just picturing R2D2
I
hurrying along and bringing you the drink.
Now, I would probably ask the robot to go to the Swiss immigration office and speed up a little bit the process so that people can move in and come in. And I would ask the robot also to have more flights, because once the people get their work permit, they just can't fly over here, because it's very complicated to fly, particularly across Europe. So I mean, it's quite complicated. But regarding technology, based on what Andrew said, yeah, we are doing things that we will not even think about doing. I mean, like I said before, to do a virtual home search was science fiction for a real estate agent in Switzerland 3 months ago. And people will be, what? No, that's not possible, which is becoming not the norm, but it's probably 10% of the home search programs now. So a lot of things that we used to do, and even some silly things in our daily lives. You know, I was like, trying to organize meetings with staff being, we are a small country, but, people in Zurich, people in Lausanne, and thanks to technology, we have a better connection. I was coming at the same time to the office and queuing and being in traffic jam. It's changing my life, because now, instead of coming for 8 a.m., I come at 10 a.m. and I work from home and I have no traffic jam. So I realize I've been really stupid for 25 years.
Yeah. So Dr. Velton, you're into the people things rather than robots. So is there some kind of a combination there, or you just rely on Andrew for that?
I rely on Andrew for a lot of things. And so we, like I said earlier, I was a professor in intercultural communication and interpersonal communication for years. And so that's really my wheelhouse and research areas. And so learning software development, program, user interface, really online educational models and things has been a continual learning process for me. I'm always I'm always blown away. Andrew does, not long ago, there was a conference, and I think Jana may have spoken there also. He hosted a conference that was hosted by an AI. And so the AI would introduce the speakers and kind of do intro, outro stuff. And he even presented with the AI character, and there was banter back and forth. It's really, to me, just, somebody mentioned a moment ago, I think Pierre, about being a, new age type stuff, something we never thought about. We've heard things about, but maybe one of these days we'll get there. Well, COVID has forced us to leap years, if not a decade or more ahead, and to be more accepting of technologies and methods we were not typically receptive of.
So I wanted to ask Jordan Blue to jump back in here and talk about economics as it relates to what Andrew is doing with robots and what Dr. Velton's doing with people. So we have math, economic data, and robots, as Pierre calls them, and also Dr. Velton's people approach, deep level. So, Dr. Velton, before we get into that, in the US now, as you know, as we all know, unfortunately, there are deep cultural divides. Now, this is not political, this is business. So you must have your hands full right now, because there's so much that we used to take advantage, or just not take advantage of, but just not think about. We're all Americans, we all think the same way. It's not true. And it's really become exacerbated because of all these things going on. Could you address that, please? And then I'd like to bring Jordan in to talk about the mathematical, the economic detail stuff.
Yeah, and thanks. It's a great question. And then Jordan may touch on this as well. But just like anything else where there's been a problem for a while, but until be honest with you, until the media latches onto it, we see it as a back burner issue.
Yeah.
A great example of that is the Me Too movement. 12 months ago, anything Me Too related would be would be really important. Now those things are still really important, and any person in HR or working with people, anybody who's a great leader would tell you still those issues are still very important. But for some reason, the media has moved on, and now it's the Black Lives Matter movement, different things like that. So that's what they're latching onto right now. So that, again, the issues haven't changed, but the focus of the media, and therefore that drives the focus of these organizations and where they feel like they can even get more funding to be able to afford programs for their organization. There's even more care, there's more concern. And I look forward to hearing more about the economic impact, because I do believe that we are seeing the business culture, which will influence the economic culture moving forward, influenced by these current kind of, on one hand, political, right, really cultural issues that are taking place.
Yeah. Okay, Jordan.
One thing that I think is kind of interesting that I'm seeing right now is companies starting to take a stance on these political issues, right? So we see a lot of things when we scroll through our LinkedIn feeds of, Black Lives Matter or Me Too or this or that. But I'm also starting to see companies actually make buying decisions because of that. And I think that that's really interesting. I was meeting with a potential client the other day, and they were talking to me about they have a really drive for green initiatives. And so one of their vetting processes for their suppliers or their vendors was, what are you doing in this space? And I can see, that is just one portion of what might be to come, right? We can imagine a lot of companies making buying decisions based on the makeup of your board, right? Or the way in which you promote diverse or inclusive initiatives within your organization. And I think that that's a big change, right? Because typically we've been competing on product, and the whoever has the best product or the best prices typically wins. But now we're starting to see companies take a more broader look at these new phenomena within our society. And I think that that's a new and interesting thing.
Thank you. Lynn Shotwell.
I think you just got a very, very good point there. Companies are definitely looking at much more factors before they include themselves in the projects. You know, diversity. There's a lot of things that companies are now supporting on a grand level. So I really agree with that point.
Yeah, Lynn Shotwell. What about the new board? How's that developing?
So talking about these issues, these are some of the things we're looking at with our own board and our own organization. You know, just to follow up on the other comment, I think the whole issue of corporate social responsibility is actually really interesting. And, you know, one of the things we're watching is, you know, to what extent will governments start imposing some of these rules, and what part of it will happen kind of on their own through corporations going out through RFPs and stuff. Look, I think we have an initiative within ERC. There was an initiative started last year on diversity and inclusion, but it really we didn't get it off the ground. We didn't do much. So now, again, we're launching that. We're looking at that for our efforts across our membership, both how do we provide our members with tools to think about diversity and inclusion within their own organizations, and then how do we think about it as an association and what our leadership looks like. So, you know, there are a lot of balls in the air and at play, but these are all things I think we have to do as leaders.
Oh, thank you so much. Rebecca, do you want to add?
Well, I mean, Lynn makes a great point. Lynn and Ed put out, Ed is our chair at Worldwide ERC with Deloitte, put out a fantastic statement on diversity and inclusion after we saw what happened here in the United States. I mean, I think it's really unfortunate that Congress can't pass any sort of police reform bill. You know, we'll be monitoring that. But I think Lynn's absolutely right. I mean, we've always, you know, coming from a culture at SHRM before we came to Worldwide ERC, always talked about this in terms of inclusion. And so I think one of the challenges, and it'll be interesting to see as Lynn was saying, you know, if we're going to start seeing certain states and whatnot try and enforce diversity on corporations. But one of the interesting things I think we have to look at as we think about our new normal, as you say, Ed, is, you know, how we continue to be supportive of inclusion when we're in this remote work environment, right? How do you make sure that you are nurturing that and that you are really, you know, living those principles? I actually spoke to the Global Forum on Migration and Development yesterday at the International Organization of Employers, and was asked, you know, what are kind of the big issues looking ahead? And I said, you know, as everyone else on this call has said, it's really about the industries that can be doing remote work. We're growing remote work, and, you know, the electronic processes. And so I think we have to figure out how that all works as we work toward being more inclusive as well. Right. The other thing I'll just mention, Ed, and I just wanted to mention it quickly. I wanted to announce it on your show, if that's all right. As we think about all of this too, I mean, I think it was our panelist on from Brazil who was talking about, you know, safety being a big part of this discussion. And I want to mention that at Worldwide ERC, we're going to be lending our voice a little bit more to the Safely Back to Work initiative that we've been a part of this week. We're going to be releasing a framework for workforce mobility safety. We'll share that on our website, and we'll share that link with you later in this week. But the point is, we want to be a source of resources for the mobility community. We know this is a fluid environment. I think we want to be a place where individuals can find if you're a mobility professional in one collective space, answers to issues, you know, around returning to work and safety. And, you know, what is my duty of care? How do I, you know, workforce plan in this uncertain environment? And so we're going to be touching on a lot of those issues. So we'll be looking forward to sharing that with you.
I'm really glad that you're sharing this, and I really thank you and Lynn Shotwell and Worldwide ERC for being involved here. Nick Curtin, how can people get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn and send me a message is usually the easiest way. ESC network would be easy. Thank you.
All right. And Teresa Howe?
You can go to teresahowe.com and reach me through there. And I'm writing a weekly blog. I just wrote one this week about a lot of the things that Lynn is talking about us as an industry trying to come together and really create a circle and lock arms instead of having a pyramid. So I think we've got to engage all of our members, and I'm excited to hear her talk about that.
Courtney, what's your next magazine about? What's the big theme?
Well, just touching base on the current situation is whether it's Black lives, white lives, all lives matter. We're talking about small business matters and how communities have supported their small businesses during and post COVID-19. So we're going to be talking about how economic development directors and state governors are continuing to retain the businesses they have and to support the small businesses through the pandemic. I also wanted to say, if anyone on this discussion or talk, I'd like to connect with, because there's some great ideas. There's some really good experts on this. So I may reach out to some of the participants and have them share their expertise in the next issue of FDI Alliance International magazine. But we talking about small business and how communities have supported and are going to support those small businesses throughout and post COVID-19.
I will connect everyone's email in messages. I'll bring everybody together. Diane, thanks for being a sponsor here. And why don't you sum up about what it looks like? And then I want to go back to Lynn about getting back to work, Lynn and Rebecca, bringing people back into the office. And do you have plexiglass up everywhere? But first, Diane, you've been in business a very long time.
Diversity, if I can.
Yeah, please.
I'm a woman-owned business, and there's a certification for women-owned businesses, and I have been a woman this whole time, not had the certification up until 3 years ago. So we officially became a woman-owned business, certified woman-owned business, and so what that means is that then you attend different events that your diversity supply chain people at large organizations are there to meet people like myself and companies that are minority diversity related. And so what I'm seeing in the last 18 months, 2 years, as we were at conferences, the diversity topic came up more. I don't know if all of you noticed that in your relocation conferences that you attended. And so I could see there was more of a forum for them, just more awareness around it. And being part of this certification process, I definitely see the outreach there. But I think that this whole upheaval that we're all facing right now is amplifying, I'm sure, the roles of these people that are in charge of making sure they're doing business with, a diversified supply chain. And, I think that it's just interesting how this is all kind of dominoed and not even meaning to, it's just I've seen the diversity communication happening more, and then this happened. So with the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests and so forth. But I have to say that there's definitely the appetite for it in large organizations, and it's a matter of how you make yourself, known to them, as I guess in all business aspects. But it's been really educational for me as I've gone through this process for the last few years. But thank you, Ed, for bringing us all together and trying to have these open forums and good discussion about all kinds of topics related to this.
Well, we're all experienced conference goers, and without that capability, I figure that this is a good way of. It's a little bit long-winded, but I think
it's great. It's great. Give yourself a pat on the back. It's good. And I think diversity inclusion is something that we have to definitely cover in one of our upcoming issues. It's fantastic, the forum that you're allowing us to connect with each other from different parts.
And so Lynn Shotwell, thank you, and ERC. My first experience with ERC just so you know, I'm originally from Boston, and I was introduced to ERC in 1979. So I go, whoa, a long time ago. And so I'm still alive. And so, so the concept here is that it's been my life, and I've seen ERC grow over the years, and it's enabled me. Actually, it's been a track to run on and build a life and a business. So I'm really grateful to still be involved. And I think that the energy and insight that Lynn, you bring with great support, practical support from Rebecca and some others that I know about coming on, that it's a whole new world for ERC. And I think you're just going to, it's be a long haul probably, but it's relationships on the Hill and in the agencies on K Street that's absolutely critical to get the first responder type status of helping the reshoring and the resupply line, rebuilding of American infrastructure. All of that's going to be the New Deal, spend, get everybody back to work, training, the new skills. Everyone's got to learn how to do this kind of thing or invent themselves somehow, upskill, reskill. And all of that, it has to do with the younger generation. Like, for instance, later today, Jordan, BAM is doing a YP thing, right?
That's right. We're doing a next generation event.
Right. So it's all about the people in your generation or even younger that are coming on the scene. They're going to want to buy a house, and they can't do it in San Francisco or San Diego, I'll tell you that. And so that means moving somewhere, whether it's Vegas or Bakersfield or Palm Springs or Texas or Arkansas, you know, where land is available, money's available, transportation linkages there, and the growth and interdependence of 5G and related robotic stuff. It's a new world, and ERC will be in the leadership and get the tax advantages back and probably enlarged because of the hands-on capability to make all of that happen. The economic development, the redevelopment, the reapplication of people's skills. And a lot of that has to do with understanding people. So Dr. Velton, I really appreciate your insight. If you'd like to sum up about your new program and the dollars and cents, how it impacts reality of business, of getting people from cross generations, cross cultures, cross time zones and borders to understand each other better.
Yeah, and so just to sum up, you all have said so many great things about DEI, and it sounds like, we're all on the same page there. Really, the older models of DEI that looked at how many employees of this ethnic background or how many employees, we're checking these boxes. It's kind of a step one in that process years ago. But really, what we're looking to do is take the research we've done and more impact the attitudes and behaviors of individuals. And so even if there is great diversity at your organization or there may not be, how do we still interact internally and externally with diversity? I mean, I've been on those calls as well where, where the first questions that are asked is, okay, tell me more about your product. It's, okay, how many Black people work at your organization? I mean, that question always catches me off guard. And I have to literally go back and think, okay, let me do the math here, because that's not something that, yes, we do diversity and stuff, but we're not trying to quantify things. We're trying to deep dive and look at, okay, the individual, no matter their background, who they are today, how do we measure and then impact that person's aptitudes in engaging diversity, working with equity, including others. So it's more about that for us. And we're proud to say we're an extremely diverse organization. About a third of our employees are Black, and another third Hispanic. And so we're very, very diverse in the different areas. But nonetheless, there's a bigger idea. If we're going to see a bigger impact long term, longitudinal, we'd call it, over time, we've got to start impacting these people in the way they think and the way they behave.
So, Pierre Geronimo, thank you very much for the perspective from Europe and the view that you have as a board member of EURA, very important. Yana Ina, thank you for your perspective from Brazil and the corporate side. Really appreciate you guys. So Pierre, what's your website?
My website is www.grmobility.com, but you can find me on the social media, Instagram, Facebook, and I even started TikTok, which is a big thing for me, but I don't think it's the right age. I think very old over there. But you won't see me dancing, by the way. You won't see me dancing.
So you just had a talk show that you hosted, right?
Yeah, we try to be creative on specific issues. We've had several webinars on the impact of COVID-19 on real estate. We've had about the reaction of global mobility managers, the steps that have been taken. And tomorrow we are going to have a webinar on the attractiveness of Geneva and Switzerland in a post-COVID-19 economy. So we try to be creative, but I wanted to just, drop a quick optimistic note. I think the mobility industry has a great future. I mean, it's going to be a disruptive industry, because when I started in this industry 25 years ago, the difference between the big player and the small players was access to technology. Today, technology is accessible for anybody. Right. And that will, I think, completely change that economy. And to get back to what Dr. Velton was telling, I think today with this access to technology, you can't hide. So the value you put on your PowerPoint presentation or your websites, you have to act in the same way. So, I mean, the name of shame is going to be very damaging for some people who just think that putting a few core values on their website is enough. No, it's really how you act on a daily basis. And the more it goes, the less you can hide.
Well, thank you very much. Now, from Brazil, you have, Yana Ina, you have a talk show that you've been involved with others called Brazil Talks?
Oh, actually, the Brazil Talks, I'm not involved. I'm just always supporting. It's a big team of Brazilian professionals here, and it's every 2 weeks. They are having this talk show, bringing different subjects in global mobility. It's been really interesting. Although Brunel as well has been providing talk shows. Brunel.
Oh, we lost the sound. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Yana Ina. We lost your sound a little bit. I very much welcome you to be back. I thank you all for being our guests today on Global TV Talk Show. And thank you. Signing off from here in San Diego, Diane in Ohio, Jordan in San Francisco, Mary Lou from Tampa, Andrew Bruzy, you're up in the Arizona mountains, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am. Yeah, a quarantine on a vineyard. And actually, as we close, just kind of closing with the thought that, one of the things that I think we have an opportunity right now, we were discussing some really robust things in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, that the mobility industry can really be the transformation leader for HR as an industry. And I think that's an opportunity that we all have in front of us, that we just need to determine what it looks like, and then why we're doing those things, and then hold ourselves accountable, make sure that we go through the proper steps and we work together in order to accomplish those goals, because the new now is not going to be us as competitors. It's going to be us working together to transform and kind of be the front leaders of this new normal.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming back on, Yana Ina. Thank you, Mary Lou. Dr. Velton, thank you. Courtney, it's great to hear your voice. I love your tone, and I love your energy, and thank you for supporting. Oh, Okay.
I wanted to say sorry. I cut out from him, and I hope that we can meet again sometime, whether it's on social media or in person.
Yes, indeed. Okay, we'll be in touch. Lynn Shotwell and Rebecca Peters.
One of your next events.
Oh, absolutely. Lynn Shotwell and Rebecca Peters, thank you so much. You made my show happen, and you all did. Teresa Howe, thank you for sticking with me all these years. It's great. Pierre, au revoir.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, have a good night. Okay, Nick, I'll see you later in Coronado. Okay. Okay.
Night, happy hour.
Let's sign off. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Adios.